So I wanted to do a video on, I saw James Wasserman had died, I think in November last year. James Wasserman, who was a kind of stalwart of the Thelemic community. He wrote a lot of books, and he was one of the people who was kind of, depending on what you believe, he was kind of responsible for the kind of resurrection, or the preservation and resurrection, I guess, of a lot of the Thelema, Crowley stuff in the 60s and 70s. There's a nice bit of wood in the sea here. And he died sadly in November last year. He was only 71, I believe, 72. And I can't get it, it's drifting out. So he, yeah, I used to see his Facebook page a year or two ago. He put up with a ton of shit from the kind of blue hair mob that seemed to have taken over that kind of community in recent years. I don't know when that happened, but yeah, he put up with a lot of stuff. I guess he was a believer in free speech and I guess gun control, and maybe I suppose he liked Trump, which didn't go down well with a lot of those people. And he put up with a lot of shit. And I was just wondering, well, I've been wondering for some time, when did that happen? When did that happen to the counterculture? Did it just become something that's meant to be about freedom, just became about basically like 1960s feminism? Because that's all it seems to be. Third wave feminism, is that what you call it? It's what it seems to have become. You have express any kind of view that isn't going along with this kind of mainstream counterculture, and you're immediately cancelled. And that's kind of what happened to him. It's funny, on those Facebook pages, I used to look at them and they'd have all these memes up there on the Thelema groups, or one of the Thelemic groups in particular. It's always the same kind of thing. Like they'll have classic one they'll do. They'll put up the text of like Liber Oz, like the Crowley's like Liber Oz, and it's like, you know, do what they will should be the whole of the law, and man has the right to roam on the earth as he will. And then they immediately correlate that with immigration or illegal immigration, as if that kind of justifies it, and that if you have any concerns in that area, or you don't believe totally in no borders, then you are not a true Thelemite. And it's just such a load of crap. I mean, are you telling me, you look at like your average person who's coming from Syria or Libya or Pakistan, crossing illegally into Europe at the moment, do you see how a lot of those people end up, you know, from Morocco, they end up standing on a street corner in a gang, or like, you know, living in some bedsit? Are you telling me all those people are doing their will? They all woke up with the same idea, they're doing their will? It's just such a load of crap, and it's used to just justify, you know, they use this they use this philosophy to just justify anything, really. But their conception of things seems to be that you know, do what you will. It literally correlates to do whatever you want. And this is something that's been said for many years, you know, do what thou wilt. Doesn't mean do whatever you want, but that's literally how they seem to take it, or push it. Yeah, so I don't know, I was just thinking about this. The things I was thinking about Crowley as well, Aleister Crowley, because in terms of this cancel culture. I was reading Magic Without Tears a while ago. Do you know how many times he uses the N word in that book? And I reckon, I was thinking about this just recently, with everything that's going on in that community. I reckon, I'm going to put a time limit on it. I reckon probably within 5 years, especially when you look at what's happened with what's happening with old Marilyn Manson at the moment. I reckon within, let's say, 5 years, I reckon, generally speaking, in the kind of Thelemic community, they'll have cancelled Aleister Crowley. Now, you might listen to that and think, oh yeah, that's not going to happen. I reckon that will. They'll cancel him, and they'll find a way to kind of like put that forward. Like, why we generally go along with this theory and that theory? We feel that he is not representative of blah de blah de blah, and he'll get cancelled. Like, apart from a few things. I reckon that will happen. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I reckon that's on the cards. Crowley's going to get cancelled by the blue hairs in Thelema. Let's see whether I'm right or not. It's already happening. I can see it happening already. Slowly, it's happening. Same thing. I was reading Fortean Times. I gave up reading Fortean Times maybe 25 years ago, because it was just getting it was like they're trying to become a mainstream magazine, like Loaded or something in the UK, and the writing was going downhill. And I bought a couple of copies recently, because I'd moved and I was trying to get waiting to get my books moved up. I didn't have anything to read, so I bought a couple of copies of Fortean Times, and it's so woke these days. It's just it's not got any better. The writing's actually got worse, but it's so woke. They're trying to cancel, or they're going along with this thing of cancelling H.P. Lovecraft. Saying, oh, we need to look at H.P. Lovecraft again, and we need to reject his poisonous views and all this stuff. And it's like listen, it's like these are rollover. These people roll over. They've obviously had an editorial meeting and thought, oh dear, like we better do something, otherwise somebody's going to call us out. So we better do something to show that we're woke. And now they've gone like they're really woke. In all the articles, there's these the odd line here or there where they demonstrate their wokeness, like they'll be writing about UFOs or something, and it will be all do in the age of Trump and stuff like this. Like they've got to put little things in to show that they're woke. And it's like, yeah, look, you're going to cancel H.P. Lovecraft. Why didn't you fucking cancel him 25 years ago? So suddenly you've just realised that H.P. Lovecraft isn't totally PC and he must be cancelled, or he must be held at arm's length. Listen, I went to 3 or 4 of those Fortean Times conferences in the 90s, and I tell you, it's like the classic quote, I've never seen so many white people in one place. Well, that's your Fortean Times audience, like it or not. And now they're full woke. Now they're like, Forteana, it's inclusive, it's for everybody. We can't tolerate any views. I bet you, I would put money that Charles Fort probably had similar views to H.P. Lovecraft. I would put money on that. I can't prove it, but you know what? It's like they're like not us. Leave us alone. They're terrified of getting called out. So they've got to be up front now. They've got to be like, right, we're full woke. It's funny with Fortean Times. One of the things that used to get me about that magazine is their superior attitude. And it's almost like they want to write about UFOs. They want to write about the Loch Ness Monster. They want to write about conspiracy theories. They want to sort of look at all this stuff. But at the same time, they've got to denigrate anybody who's actually literally doing research or into those areas. They're very condescending. And they're still doing that. Yeah, I don't rate that magazine at all. But it's like the same with Aleister Crowley. Whenever they were writing an article about Aleister Crowley, in whatever, in 40 Times or like Wikipedia, or whenever you see anyone like talking about Aleister Crowley, who was Aleister Crowley, they always very quickly mention that Aleister Crowley, blah blah blah, he did this and did that, and he died like a pauper in Hastings, as if this fact just it like denigrates the man, it denigrates his entire life. And this is a guy who achieved a lot. I don't know how true all this stuff is about him being a drug addict. Sure, there's he took drugs, he did a bit of opium and stuff, but I cannot see for the life of me that this guy was a kind of out of control drug user when he created so much. This guy travelled all over the world, climbing mountains, writing poetry, putting stuff together. I mean, he's obviously a very together man. He wasn't some nutter who was just off his head on drugs all the time. I see very little evidence of it, although this is cited quite a lot. And of course, yeah, he took some opium, but so they always cite this thing that Crowley, he died in penury in Hastings. And, well, I've seen it written that he was actually quite together. He was still pottering around doing stuff when he was very old. He was still kind of like he was meeting up with Kenneth Grant, and he was planning for the future, and he was still putting his writings together, still very much doing what he did. And you think 71 probably still had all his faculties, but they always do this thing that they say that, oh, he died at 71 in Hastings in England, and then the inference is like, oh dear, how sad, he thought he was a magician, but look how he ended up. Oh, what a sad case he was. Well, okay, well let's switch it then. If that's your yardstick, you're gonna have this yardstick of who is a success or who is a failure, and you're going to use Crowley as an example of somebody who was ultimately a failure. Well, so who's the success then? Would a success be somebody who's lives to a very ripe old age, and they're surrounded by a lot of women, and they've got a big house and a lot of money? So you're going to say a success is, let's take an example, Hugh Hefner, this Playboy guy. Is he a success? Was he a success in your eyes? If you take those two people, you'd say, yeah, Crowley's a failure, but Hefner's a big success. Well, I'd say the opposite. I'd say this Hugh Hefner's just a great example of just a total failure, really. Yeah, he's got a lot of shit. Yeah, he's got a lot of money, whatever. But what did he actually achieve in his life? What did he achieve? What's he left behind? Like zilch, nothing. A few rotting old magazines and a brand name, and probably a load of people fighting after his money. And yet they make out Crowley's like a failure. I know, I'm just rambling, there's no real point to this video. I just want to see how long I could do on this thing and how long I'm allowed to upload for on YouTube, because I'm not even actually very sure. This is the innards of some sort of, that's a wing. I think that's a wing. Actually, it might be a turtle's flipper. That's a flipper off a turtle. I wonder what that's symbolic of. Another thing I was thinking about this, one of the things that I saw posted a while back in one of these communities on Facebook was that they were talking about how they felt that the reading list for the AA needed to be updated, and more things, or more modern things, needed to be put in, and antiquated things needed to be left out. Which is, when you think of it, how long has it been going? I mean, what, 100 years? Maybe 75 years? And some of the things in there that, you know, Crowley's reading list, you know, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, various old Christian texts that, you know, hundreds of years old, suddenly they're under you know, oh, we don't need this anymore. This is a bit antiquated, and maybe we need to throw some of this stuff out and put in a bit of Terence McKenna. Somebody made a joke about the three pillars of Thelema being is it Terence McKenna, Robert Anton Wilson, and Lon Milo Duquette. Yeah, I mean, I can see the argument, fair enough. You can see maybe one or two things should be added, but really you're gonna start chucking stuff out because it's a little bit old and it might be a bit hard to get hold of, maybe a bit difficult to read. You're gonna say, oh yeah, you know, you're finding a book difficult to read, and yet at the same time you've got aspirations to be a great magician, but you can't read this book's a little bit hard to read. Come on. I had this discussion with somebody about Crowley as well. I said, a lot of these books I read, it's like, oh, the this and that of Aleister Crowley, or An Idiot's Guide to Thelema, or whatever. I said, well, why can't they just read a Crowley book? And this person said to me, yeah, well, a lot of people, they can't, the language is a bit antiquated. And again, you know, if you can't read a book, you can't get the essence from a book. I found Crowley difficult to read at first. It took me a few years, actually, with stuff like Magic in Theory and Practice. Some of it I still don't get what he's talking about. Maybe the jokes fall a bit flat in modern times. But I'd take that over some of these how-to books any day. Like, you've got to persevere with this stuff. I guess that's it for this little ramble. I don't even know if this is recording anymore. Let me see if I can make it up to this cross.